The festive season is round the corner and airfares are on the rise. Popular routes like Delhi-Chennai, Mumbai-Bengaluru and Delhi-Hyderabad are witnessing a spike in airfares, marking at least a 15% year-on-year increase as the festival approaches. Union Civil Aviation Minister Rammohan Naidu earlier had promised to conduct an inquiry into allegations of abrupt fare hikes following complaints by MPs and a nudge by Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla. What NDTV today has learnt is that there will be no price cap rule for the aviation sector and that the Civil Aviation Ministry could be suggesting price monitoring whenever it witnesses a big surge in the airfares. There will be, of course, no imposition, but only feedback-based mechanisms to ensure that airfares don't skyrocket. That's what ministry sources have told my colleague Aishwarya Jain from NDTV. So are surging airfares dampening the festive mood? That's what we will try to make sense of tonight and also learn the potential ways of dealing with it. Of course, Sanjay Lazar, who's an aviation expert, will be joining us. But before that, let me go across to my colleague Aishwarya Jain, who's been reporting on this. Aishwarya, tell us, how is the ministry looking at it? Because I was trying to look at how much, the airfare has really gone up, and there could be at least 15 to 20% increase, and that is quite significant for middle-class families who depend on air travel, considering that train tickets are also really booked during festive season. How is the ministry looking at this, especially because Rammohan Naidu, in a very promising note last month in the parliament, had said that he could be initiating a probe into something like this?
Well, certainly it is every year when the festive season arrives in the country, and there are a surge in the prices as far as the airlines are concerned, which is easily visible. And looking at the upcoming festive season in India as well, when we asked Civil Aviation Minister Rammohan Naidu as to what ministry is thinking to put a cap on the airlines to surge prices. Remember, there were reports that also came in last year that there were 70 to 80% price hike in a short duration to those frequent places where most of the flights arrive. And therefore, the reason the Civil Aviation Minister clearly stated that yes, they can issue guidelines to the private airlines, but there is no law which is in place. They can just look and help the passengers not to take and not to ensure that the airlines do not have such a massive price hike during the festive season as well. And certainly it is in the upcoming years. Civil Aviation Minister also hinted that there will be certain guidelines that could be opted as far as the law is concerned. And currently there is no law regarding it. They can't just put a blame on the airlines, but certainly asked airlines to have a certain gap of the prices of certain airlines which are clearly flying during these times. So yes, of course, on one side it is Civil Aviation Minister who has ensured that yes, the airlines will be send out the guidelines, but there is no law, and therefore the reason perhaps the airlines had to consider that they remain beyond that limit of the prices.
Right. Thank you, Aishwarya Jain, for joining us with those details. Also joining us now is Sanjay Lazar, who is an aviation expert. We also have Sriram Khanna, who's the managing editor of Consumer Voice. To you, Mr. Lazar, thank you both of you for joining me, first of all. Mr. Lazar, this year, the Shara falls on the 12th of October. Diwali will be celebrated from 31st of October to 2nd of November. But, of course, the airfares are surging. How much of this has to do with what is really happening in the Indian skies? Because if you look at the airlines, there is a change in that scene because, if you look at Go Air, which is a major airline, which was a major airline till 2 years ago, it has folded its wings. There's SpiceJet that's gotten into trouble. There's, of course, there's only Indigo right now, and, of course, the Tatas. How much of this is responsible for the surge in the prices? Does demand have to really play a very important role in the in the spike in air prices?
Thank you, Vasudha, for having me on your show. First of all, yes, there's no question that fares have risen even without festival times. They are pretty high at the moment. I recently just came back from Delhi, and one day spot fare, just the same day, same evening, it was frightfully expensive, almost 14,000 one way in a full service carrier. But be that as it may, we have to understand that India is facing breakaway growth, real tearaway, numbers at the moment. Add to that, like you correctly mentioned, we've lost Go Air. SpiceJet has cut back its number of aircraft, so flights have come down. Akasa is not operating at full pelt because it's not grown really in the last 1 year with new aircrafts. So there is a shortage of seats. Now, the other thing which, and of course, the minister rightly said he will monitor, which is a welcome step, but there is no law. The Air Corporations Act has been repealed. Unless it's a force majeure like it was during COVID, the government cannot intervene. What the government can, however, do, which nobody talks about, is reduce its taxes, which are almost 40% of the airfare. Please stop. Let's stop. The passengers are suffering. Airlines have been suffering for years, but the government is taking 40% in taxes. You have a acute fare, you have a GST, you have a state ATF fare, you have, PSF, you have so many taxes levied on airlines. Nobody's ever thought of, I'd like to hear one minister say, okay,
Right.
it's becoming too high, let me drop the taxes. No one wants to do that. They only want to shoot from, the airlines have suffered losses and, for years on it. We've
Right.
seen how many airlines close down.
Absolutely.
We see passengers suffering under the burden of heavy fares. Some of our fares are, it was cheaper for me to go Delhi, Dubai, Delhi than come Delhi, Pune, Delhi. That's how high the fares are.
Okay.
So that's the first thing I'd like, let the government talk to all the states, rationalize ATF taxes first of all.
Okay.
Then talk of bringing in some kind of rationalization.
Okay,
I
Sriram
can't
Khanna,
see too much-
that's a very important point that Mr. Sanjay is making. But when I was covering the Parliament last month, there was an MP, Shafi Pirambil, who moved a private member's bill, and he said that airlines were operating at full capacity during peak season. They were also earning profit margins, but there is this current policy of unregulated overpricing, which was, he pointed out, unethical and unfair, and it's a lot of burden on consumers, and especially injustice to the pool of migrant workers who live abroad. Now, he suggested a quasi-judicial body could also be set up to regulate and monitor the air tariff ethically and equitably. Do you think, what are the options in front of the government? Do you think this sector could do with some kind of regulation of that sort?
Well, bring in regulation by all means, bring in
Yes.
subsidy for the airlines then. It's okay for the MP, Honorable MP, to point out that airlines were making profit in this month or last
Right.
month or the month before last. You didn't look at the 10 years that they bled dry. You didn't look at the number of airlines that shut down.
Right.
I mean, I'm not an advocate for any airline. I'm a passenger myself. I buy my own tickets. But let's balance this out.
Right. Mr. Khanna, would you
both
like
have
to take
be
that
fair.
question, sir? Sriram Khanna? Okay. Okay, Mr. Lazar, please go on with what you were saying.
No, my point is very clear that, it takes two hands to clap. And if the government wants to sound populist and make such statements on the floor of the House, lovely. I mean, let's back it. But, they're already giving some sort of subsidy for the regional networks for run. Extend it to trunk routes, extend it to holiday, festival, religious seasons. And it will be. I mean, I'm booking a ticket from Pune to Madurai, and it's almost 32,000 during that Diwali period, and that's a huge amount. You've got to understand, you can go halfway up to the UK in that much. But there's no, what else can the traveler do? He's bound by this. There is absolutely no regulation that is left in place, and there's nothing I can do. Now, if the government were to subsidize or reduce taxes, I'm sure the airline would extend its arm and stretch forward.
Right. Mr. Khanna, what would your comment be on this? Do you think the government, or for that matter, government can do anything in this regard, or do you think what is the best way to deal with something like this, the surge in airfares during festive season?
See, this problem of prices rising on particular routes on particular dates, when the supplies falls short of total number of seats demanded, spikes the price. And I have seen on certain sectors, for example, let me tell you about Delhi-Goa. On the prior to New Year Eve, a 5,000 or 6,000 rupee ticket is selling for 30,000 rupees.
Right.
Yes.
6 times the price it's going. And on other occasions, even on festival leaves, when people want to get home on time, and the total number of seats are not as much as the demand is, then the airlines play one customer against the other and keep hiking prices till it becomes out of reach,
Right.
5 to 6 times the normal price. The only solution for this is a price cap. And some time back, the government has imposed price caps. I'm not saying they shouldn't make profit. Okay, you take double, but you can't make it 6 times. There has to be some reasonable profit. You can't have super normal profits all the time.
Right.
So there must be a cap on the prices imposed by the DGCA under the regulations, under the Civil Aviation rules, that on particular routes which are amenable
Right.
to such spikes on certain occasions, those price caps should operate,
Okay.
beyond which the prices will not be allowed to go.
Okay, so
And
that is
until this
something that the
happens-
government will have to probably think and do. Thank you, Mr. Khanna. Thank you, Mr. Lazar, for joining us. So many aspects that triggering the hike in airfare, even as India preps for the festive season. Of course, the government, the Ministry of Civil Aviation, has promised to look into this. We'll keep tracking this and more for you. But now, time for a short break. More news and updates on the other side.